Today, we're going to make the granddaddy of them all. We're going to take everything we've learned from making pendants and go crazy with it. You don't want to miss this show. Let's make some jewelry. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am the wrap maker, Jim McIntosh, and today's show is kind of the closing show for our series on pendants. You've noticed I've made several pendants. I really wanted to do this particular one because we're going to take everything we've learned and we're going to add a little bit more to it. This is going to open up how you create wire wrap jewelry. It's going to open it up so much more to you. What we're going to do is we're going to use, instead of using an oval stone, an oval cabochon, we're going to use one that's a little differently shaped, maybe add some extra curves to it. We're going to talk about design, and we're also going to add one more wire to the frame. That's going to give us a little bit extra to do some designing. As we go, I'll show you some various ways that you can use all of your frame wires to design some very interesting wire wrap pieces. So if you're ready, let's take a look at our tools and materials. Now, before we get to the tools and the materials, I want to remind you about one thing, and that's my new book, Wire Wrapping: Simple Techniques for Beautiful Designs. This book takes and shows you every single thing that you need to know to make wire wrap jewelry. And notice it's simple techniques. Over the last 20 years, I've developed very easy techniques to help you make wire wrap jewelry. I've made all the mistakes and found ways to not make those mistakes. And I put all of that in here. I don't keep any secrets from anybody. So make sure you pick you up a copy of this. There should be a link down in the description that'll take you right over so you can purchase your own copy of my new book. So here's the tools we're going to need for this particular project. Our wire comes on a coil, so we're going to have some way of getting it off. So we're going to use some flush cutters to hold all of our wires together as we're working with them. We're going to need some painter's tape, and we're going to need some scissors to be able to cut the painter's tape off with. We're also going to be marking where we're going to be placing our wraps. This is very important for this particular one because we're going to be putting some wraps in some odd places. So make sure you have a Sharpie, a good fine tip permanent marker. We're going to need something to measure with, so I got my ruler here. We'll need some chain nose pliers. These are going to help us move some of our smaller, finer wires into place. And then we're going to need these. Now, these are the tool that I can't live without, and it's wrap maker pliers. And these are exactly what they say they are. They help you to make wraps. This takes a lot of the coordination out of making those wraps, which makes it easier and simpler to do. So make sure you pick you up a pair of these wrap maker pliers. So the materials for this project are very simple. We've just got three things. We've got our 21 gauge square dead soft wire. This is going to be the frame wires. Then we've got 21 gauge half round wire. This is what we're going to use to wrap that frame around the stone to make it secure. And you'd want 21 gauge dead soft half round wire for that. And now here's the last thing. Now I chose for this particular one an oddly shaped stone. It's not an oval, it's not an oval like we've been using, but notice it's kind of got a little extra to it. It's got these this side of it is not very uniform. So we're going to have to kind of think about how to wrap this particular piece in order to get it secured. And that's what this whole thing is about. But I've also used a very thick stone. So this is going to take 5 wires, and we're going to be able to use those wires to make a design. Now, I haven't practiced making this, so this is going to be the first time I've looked at this and the first time I've made this particular piece. So we're going to kind of be learning this together, not learning how to do it. I've done many of these, but this particular stone, we're going to be kind of figuring out the design as we go. The first thing we need to do with this particular stone is we need to determine how it's going to be oriented. What's going to be the top, what's going to be the bottom of the stone. And that's completely up to you, but it's also completely up to how you want that stone oriented. Sometimes the stone will just kind of almost show you how it should be oriented. And this particular one does just that. This longer point down here kind of helps us appreciate that this is the orientation of that stone. So now that I've determined that, and I've kind of figured there's a center line right here, so even the top of this is not centered. So that's going to add a completely different degree of difficulty to this. So first thing we need to do is we need to pull off about 4 or 5 inches of painter's tape. This is going to help us determine where we're going to place our wraps. It's going to help us to figure out how much wrap wire we're going to need. So we're going to cut down the length. So I've cut a length piece of tape down the length of the tape. And this is what's going to help us to figure everything out. We're going to write on this. So I want to find the center line. So this is the bottom of the stone. So my center line would be right about in here. So I'm going to start right there. So I'm going to put my painter's tape on my center line. And then I'm going to bring it all the way around the outside of the stone until the two ends meet up. Right about there. And I'm going to trim off the excess. Get rid of that. Straighten this out just a little bit. There. All right, so this is how we've got our stone. This is how we've got our stone set up. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make that mark at the bottom where this bottom center is. So I've got my fine tip permanent marker, and I'm just going to make this mark right here. That reminds me that that's the center. The first thing I have to do, though, is I have to figure out how I want to put my wraps. There's a lot of ways you can do this. I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to make this a free-form pendant. I'm not going to make this a standard wire wrap pendant. And I'm going to put my wrap, I think, on the side here. And I'm going to use the rest of this to kind of put a design. Yeah, I think I will. That's what we're going to do. So when I make this, just to remember where the center mark is, I always put kind of an arrow. When I'm doing these offset ones, I put kind of something there that reminds me that that's, and I'm going to make an L for left. So my arrow there. That's just pointing to my center mark. And then I'm going to make a wrap area. I kind of want a larger wrap area. Let's see how long I want it. Right about here. And just so I know that that's the wrap area, because this can get confusing on these strange designs like this. I'm going to connect those two. The other thing I want to do is I just want to wrap the top. So I'm going to make a short wrap here. And there's my center, and I will make a wrap right there. That should, yeah, because what's going to end up happening, and I'll show you this so you understand what's going to end up happening with this top, is the top, it's going to kind of go above the stone right like this. So if you look at this, the wires are going to extend over the stone. Okay, so that will center everything right up in here. All right, so now that we know what we're doing with this, we can remove tape from the stone, and we're going to just put it on our work surface in front of us. This is going to help us see just how much wire we need. We're going to do a little bit of wire wrap math. So we've got our tape on our work surface, and we're measuring it. Now notice this is kind of interesting. This hardly ever happens. It measures 4 inches. Perfect. Now, I want to remind you of wire wrap math. Wire wrap math is very simple. You take the length of the tape, which is the circumference of the stone, and you double it. So we've got 4 inches here. We're going to double that 8. That'll give us enough wire to get around the stone, make some nice design on the front, but we also need enough to make a bail. So we're going to add 2 inches to that to make our bail. So our total wire length that we need for each strand of wire is 10 inches. 10 inches of 21 gauge square dead soft wire. That'll give us enough. We're going to cut 5 strands for this. Now normally I've been showing you how to do it with 4. This time we're going to add an extra wire for extra support, but also for extra design. And you'll see just what we're going to be doing with this very soon. So cut yourself 5 strands of 21 gauge dead soft square wire at whatever length you've determined. In my case, it's going to be 10 inches. Okay, so I've cut my wire. Let's kind of get some of this stuff out of the way. Cut 5 strands of my wire at 10 inches each. Now, we're going to straighten each one of these. There we go. We want them relatively straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Okay, just want to get them so that they're all going to be able to we'll be able to work with them. So we're just going to straighten each one out. There we go. A couple more. And the last one. And I'm just using my fingertips. Now, I've been saying you can use nylon jaw pliers for this. You can use a piece of cloth to protect your fingertips if you'd like. Whatever you'd like to do. Completely up to you. So here's the remainder of the tape that I used earlier to cut the strip out and measure it. I'm going to make some flags. I'm going to make probably about 6 or 8 flags because we're using a bit more wire. And this is going to take more of this tape, painter's tape, to manage all of that. So I'm just going to pre-cut these and stick them. I always stick them to the edge of my work surface. So you'll see me reaching over to grab them periodically. I'm going to grab these here. Let's make one more. It should be plenty. I might use to hold on to the rest of that as well. There we go. So we want to take our 5 wires, excuse me. We take our 5 wires. See, I'm so used to doing this with 4. And we're going to line them up next to one another so that they are flat and so that they meet up at one end. And kind of just to make sure. There we go. And we're going to take a piece of painter's tape and we're going to put it across the 5 wires and we'll bring it around the other side. That will hold our wires together. And then you're going to start here. You're going to work your way up to the opposite end and put another piece of tape. Another tape flag right here. Hold on, there we go. So that's what you should have. And I notice they're kind of split. So I showed you that trick, fixing it. Fix that right quick. So I've got all my wire strands kind of fixed and put next to each other. Next thing we need to do is find the center. So I'm using 10 inches of wire. So what I'm going to do is I am going to mark the center of this at 5 inches. That's my center. And we're going to line this up with the center on here. Now remember I kind of said that this was the left here and that this is the center right there. I've kind of really messed that up. So that's where I'm going to make my center mark. Line center mark up with the center mark. And I'm going to, this is my wrap area. I'm going to make my L here. So I remember that that's the left side of this. Now nobody's going to see this. It's going to be up against the stone. Put our other wrap areas on there. These are our top wraps. Just like that. So we should have 3 sections that we're going to wrap. We don't need our tape any longer, so we can get rid of this. There we go. So now what we need to do is we need to make our wraps. We always start here at the center. So let's start doing that right now. All right, so I've cut a piece of wrap wire. Now this is a little bit larger wrap that we're going to be making. So I've kind of cut a little bit bigger piece. Probably won't need all of that, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to use my wrap makers. I'm going to grab the wire frame wires right there, and I'm going to take my wire. I'm going to insert it. Remember, again, I've got it in the curl. The inside of the curl is flat. Outside of my curl is half round. We want the half round out. So I'm going to put the flat end against this. And you know, let me remind everybody about these wrap maker pliers also. The wrap makers are made in such a way that when you grab the frame wires, it opens a gap here in the middle. I don't know if you can see that, but it opens a gap there. And that gap allows the wrap wire to go in between the jaws. So I'm going to insert it right here with the flat side against this, against my frame. I'm going to insert it where I want to start my wrap. When I get it where I want it, till the bottom's out in there, I'm going to add just a little bit extra pressure, and then I'm going to make my wraps. So I'm going to make 4 wraps, 3, make 5 wraps there. And I'm going to use my wrap makers to kind of stop and push everything together and fix my wrap a little bit here. And then I'm just going to squeeze it and set the wrap in place. That makes it so that it does not move on. We're going to continue with our wraps. I always like to hold on to the frame again, just to kind of give me that extra bit of leverage. I'm going to wrap all the way to my next mark. So about every 4 or 5 wraps, I'll stop and I'll set it. And then we'll just continue to make our wraps till we get over there. Almost there. A couple more wraps. That's probably the last section of wraps that we'll need to make. One more. So now we've got this first section, this middle section wrapped. We can go ahead and trim off our excess wrap wire, and we always trim it half the width of our wire frame. We cut both of these sides off, trim them down. There we go. And you want to make sure you've got them nice and flat against the wire frame. What we need to do now is we want to shape the wire frame around the stone. And we're going to do this kind of the freeform pendant method. I think that's going to be best. So we're going to do that before we do these outside wraps. If you want to review the freeform pendant video, just go ahead and check out the channel. I'll leave a link down below just so you can get to it. But what we do is we're going to tape our stone in front of us to our work surface. So I got another piece of tape here. And we're just going to kind of, there, put it to our work surface. Now I got the bottom of the stone facing away from me. Now we want to remember the left and the right. So this will be the left side since we're upside down. So we're going to take the tip of the stone and we're going to, this is probably the easiest way, is if you line up your wrap makers and you just kind of make a V. See, so all I've done is made the V. That way I can put it on here and then I can shape it around my cabochon. This will give us a nice tight wrap there. So we're around the cab. We can now take the tape off and set our stone aside. Whoops. Set our stone aside. Now we can work on it a little bit more. So this is what it looks like. We're going to want to put, so these are kind of loose right now, these wires here on the left. So let's take the tape off. And we're going to make a design. I like, since this is a piece of crazy lace agate, what I'm working with today. And I really like the patterns in it. So I'm going to want to kind of keep certain patterns on here showing. So I'm going to start by securing the bottom of the stone. So I always take this front wire, and I'm going to kind of bend it over the stone. So now I've got this part secured, and I want to mimic some of these lines here. So this line, there's a line right here that I kind of want to mimic with this first wire. So I'm going to shape it, and we can refine this shape as we go. want to shape it just like that. There we go. We can also use another wire. So I'm going to take the second wire in the front. And we want to kind of give something complementary to that. So we'll do the same thing, similar. Well, let's put this on here and see how it looks. Decisions, decisions, decisions. Okay, that's kind of what I want right there. Okay, that will get us some of this in the front. So we want to rejoin these two wires now back in with these. Make sure you're not crossed over. Make sure everything is straight. Take just a second. There we go. So I've got them all. Nothing's crossed over. We're going to take another flag and we're going to secure the top. So now we can take a better look at what we have. See how we've got that. So the left side of the stone from bottom to top is secured. Notice that. See, I've got a nice secure, but this stuff here is all open here at the top. So we got to fix that as well. We want to do something complementary. So we're going to take that off, tape off. And I don't want to cover too much of this red spot here up. So I want to be careful, but I want to also make sure I get the top secured in place. So let's do that. And then we're going to bring it back. Notice I'm just using my fingertip also. And you can use, like I think I'm going to want this to be just a little bit sharper. Seeing as how that is kind of sharper. There we go. Just to take a little bit more of this out. See, so if you just work with your wire, and that's why we're using dead soft wire. I keep telling everybody that dead soft wire is so forgiving. You can use this dead soft wire to make these designs so much easier and bend this wire to do what you want it to do. Okay, so I think once we join this guy back up, and we can refine some of this a little bit more, but I'm going to rejoin this in. Don't want my wires crossed over one another, so be careful. Take your time, make sure your wires are straight. It's better to take your time and make sure your wires are straight now than have to try and figure it out after you've crossed too many wires over. So let's put another flag here on this side. And this will give you an idea as to kind of what we're looking at. So notice that. See, so we've got some of these swirls. Now, after I get this secured, I'm going to refine this right here, these swirls across the front. But this gives you an idea as to what we're doing. So now that we've got our design, we need to secure the top. So we need to make these top wraps. So I'm going to kind of open this up just a little bit so we can get our fingers in there to do some work. I'm going to cut another piece of wrap wire. So I've cut another about an 8-inch piece of wrap wire. And we're going to use this to wrap. And I'm going to wrap this side first. Pay close attention how I do this. This can get tricky. I'm setting up my wrap makers like I always do. I'm going to insert my wrap wire until it bottoms out. I'm going to give it a squeeze, and then I'm just going to, now notice I pushed my finger through the center and brought it around. See, so I pushed my finger through the center and brought them around. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6, one more, 7. We're going to finish on the inside, and I want to kind of just trim this off. Now remember, we don't set these top wraps because we want those top wraps to move. Make sure you put your curl back in so you know which is which, because we're going to reuse that in just a second. And we're We're going to do the same thing over here. We trim off excess. We don't need that particular one. And then I just use my thumbnail and push it down so it's even with the rest. Now we want those to move. So now we need to wrap this second side. So we're going to set up our wrap maker pliers. We're going to grab our wrap wire. We're going to make it, remember we counted 7 over here, so we need to count 7 on this side as well. So we're going to put it, wrap wire in there, give it a little extra squeeze, and then we're going to push it through the center. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more would be 7. 7. There we go. Remember, we want to keep these loose. We're going to push them down kind of where we want them. We're going to adjust that in just a minute once we figure out where we want them at the top of the stones. Trim off your excess wire. Put your curl back in just in case you want to use this piece again. And let's get rid of this one. Make sure I don't cut something I don't want to cut here. Bring this up just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And knock this down to where we want it. There we go. Now that we've got the top secure, we can take these top pieces of tape off. Okay. Very good. Let's take a look at what we've got. Got tape stuck to me. So here's where we are. So we want to move these wraps so that they're above the stone, because we're going to bend the backs a little bit. Back wires into place. Okay, so that's what we've got. So let's just look at it. Here's where we are. Move these upper ones so that they're above this top part. And now we need to form the back. So remember, in the other videos, we just kind of grabbed one wire, I pulled it away, then I took my wrap makers, and I'm going to start here just outside of that wrap, the bottom wrap, and I'm just going to hold on to it. I'm going to twist it to the center. And I'll do the same thing just below the top wrap, same wire. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to grab the wrong wire and twist the wrong wire. You know what I did? I've been sitting here telling you guys, don't cross your wires over one another. And guess what I did? I crossed my wires. So what we have to do is we have to redo this particular wrap. I crossed these wires over to the point to where they aren't going to work how I wanted them. So let's do a little bit of extra work here. So we're going to fix some of that. Straighten my wires back out. We're going to redo this wrap right here. So let me fix this, and we'll be back in just a minute. All right, so I fixed my little mistake. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. This is really, this is supposed to be fun. And you make mistakes, you learn from them. So I learned from that particular mistake. So now we can finish this back wire how we had it. Let's take this piece of tape off. That was my other mistake. I took the wrong piece of tape off. So I'm going to now grab that one wire that we separated out, and I'm going to bend that. This is going to finish up our back on one side. And then I do have to fix some of this. So we're going to have to kind of straighten a little bit of this wire out. So to straighten out these little kinks, you just kind of go in, just kind of bend them back a little bit, so they're a little bit smoother and a little more rounded. We can fix the roundness here in just a minute as we're doing it. So I've got one side of the back done. Let's do the other side. So pull the back wire away. Get the tape off of your finger. That's the cool thing about this tape. After I've done these videos and stuff, or even when I'm just working at the bench, I will have pieces of tape stuck all over me. My elbows, I usually have a piece on my elbow or my shoe all the time. Do I have one on the front of me? Look at this. got one on the front of me. My producer is showing me what I got in front of me here. So let's go ahead and we'll bend the back wires here. I'm going to show you something interesting about these bends for the back. So let's look at the back. I'm going to put the stone in right quick so you can see the back better. But what we've done is on this, the back is going to have to support the entire piece. All right, so let's put this stone in. So I can show you the back of this real quick. And we want to put the stone in right now anyway, but I think it's interesting what's happened here with the back is we want to make sure the back is properly supported. So look at how this is supported. We do have a couple of problems that we're going to fix here. This is what happens when you use these larger stones, is when we're moving everything into position, we have to make some adjustments so that they're hidden. The wires are hidden to the back of the stone. So this one's going to have to the bends are going to have to be put in a slightly different place. So we're going to move those down so that they are hidden behind the stone. But we also want to make sure that it's covering the entire back of the stone. And as we kind of finish working with this, we move these top wraps around, everything is going to fall into place. And we're going to have to do a few other things to make sure that there's enough support. Like there's not enough support on the side of the stone right here, and I'm going to show you what you can do to fix that in just a minute. But let's move our wires, our top wires, into position. So this right side is about where I want this. So I'm going to move this other side up because we want these to be at the center of the stone. So right about there. Once I get it where I want it, and we're going to have to fix the bottom here again. Okay. All we're doing is just dead soft wire, moving it and maneuvering it to where we want it. And yeah, notice this front one is not where I wanted it. This front right side. So we're going to kind of pull this wire just a little bit there. All right, so that's where we want everything. So let's go ahead and we'll set these top wraps so they don't move out of place. So now that we've got those fixed where we want them, we'll fix this wire here in just a minute. So what we want to do is, before we make the bail, before we set the bail up, we got to do something with these sides, this long side. So notice there's no support there. What I figured out to do is I separate these wires just a little bit. And then I take my wrap makers and I grab one of the front wire and I make a bend in it. You see how I made that bend? And I want this bend to kind of take up some of that side space. And what you're doing is you're pulling that wire in. We're going to do the same thing again with that other wire, this other side wire, to mimic that one. So we can kind of grab it. We can kind of bend it a little bit. Like that. See, so do you see what we did? We took some of this space out. I'll move my fat fingers here. We've took some of this space out to give just additional support here on the side, and we've also kind of made a design. And we can refine this just a little bit. It's just a little too long. So just take our wrap makers and kind of put things in. Be careful of your stone. But that will take some of that space out. It doesn't take anything away from the front, but it adds an extra element, design element. And you can do this along this side, any place on the side of this. I've even taken where I moved one of these across the front, made it bend, and then put it on the front. But that's just something you can do to add an additional design element. So now we've got our wires up here crossed over, everything's set. We're going to bend our bale wires out. I'll bring them back together. Oops. Bring them back together above the stone. Make sure they're smooth and cross from one another. And take another piece of painter's tape and tape all of the wires at the top together. Okay. And again, we've got this little gap here at the bottom. So take that out. We take our wrap makers and we squeeze. You want to force the stone down towards the bottom. Okay. And we can squeeze that a little bit more in just a minute. My wires have kind of moved out of the way here, so we kind of fix this. All right. All just a little bit of what I call housekeeping. Just kind of making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Go ahead and make our bale wrap. Now, as you recall, the bale, we can't put it across all 10 of these because it makes too big of a space. So what we do is we grab one of the top wraps. We take our wrap wire. We're doing that double wrap as we did in the freeform pendant. So I'm going to put my wrap wire in there. I'm going to give it a little squeeze, and then I'm going to start my bale. So I'm going to make 7 wraps. 4, 5, 6, 7. I start and finish my bale wrap so that both wires are at the back of the stone. Once you get that first wrap, we're doing that double wrap. We'll move it into place, give it a squeeze, set it in place. Now we can remove our tape that's been holding everything together. And we want to separate the two sides again. This is tricky because we want to make sure we get 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the 5th one. So just kind of take your time again. This is not impossible. This is real easy stuff. There we go. Bring it back down so that they're horizontal. I'm going to take one wire. You know what? I'm not going to take one wire. We're going to do something fancy. We're going to do something fancy. We're going to take 2 wires. Yeah. So we got 1. So we got the front 2, and then we're going to take the next 2 and line them up next to one another. So we've got 4 bale wires. We're going to make a super bale. Super bale. Now, I showed you in one of my previous videos to use those 6-step pliers. Let me grab mine right quick. So we're going to use our 6-step pliers to make our bale. These things work really well. I really like using them. But we'll set the pliers on here where we want to make our bale. Now remember, we want to make the bale in between. So we're going to go to the back, and we're going to go in between our bale, our wrap wire. So we're going to go back, in between, and down the back. Okay, so you guys hear walking around, and you guys hear growling just a minute ago. This is it. This is the shop mascot. This is Buddy. Look at the camera, Buddy, and say hello. He weighs a ton, but he runs all over this house. He runs the house. So just to let you guys know what all that commotion is. Okay, big boy? All right, go on. Here. There you go. Go on. He weighs a ton. All right, let's finish our bale. So got my bale wires here to the back. I've formed my bale. We're going to, everything above the wrap, this top long wrap wire is going to be rounded. Everything below it is going to be flat against the wrap, the bale wrap. Now we want to incorporate our wrap wire, or our bail wire, into our bail wrap. So I'm just going to go now, start from the top and work my way back to the bottom over everything that we've already wrapped. I'm going to do one more. There. So now they're right next to each other. And we're going to twist them together. This is going to keep them nice and secure. All right. Trim it short. So we're going to push it towards the top of the bail. We're going to give it a trim. So it's only about 3 or 4 wraps long. And now we're going to take all 4 of these the bottoms of these bail wires, and we're going to push them toward the top of the bail to cover up our little pigtail. Trim those wires short. Push those wires up against the bail so that they are covering pigtail. There we go. So the bail is a 4-wire bail, and I like to kind of separate them a little bit. So I've got them separated out. What I like to do is I like to add like a little curve to it. So I'm going to use these step pliers. I'm going to kind of just start at the top. I'm going to give it just a slight little curve. I'll do the same thing over here. Just a slight little curve. Whoops. Slight little curve. And I'll bring them back together a little bit. That way they've just got this little curved action here that's going to just kind of adds a little character to it. Last thing we have is to do something with these top wires. I'm going to show you. I'm just going to remove the front wires, because you know I only use 2 wires when I make my pieces. You can do anything you want with these top wires, but I'm going to bring mine around like this, and I'm going to want to kind of fill in some of this space in the front. So I'm going to go here, I'll go down, I'm going to separate these like that. And this one, I will go up and around. I'm going to add I always kind of mess around with these and see what I like. And I kind of like this. Today I like this. I want to make sure I bend these way so that they don't hurt anybody. And these bottom ones that I kind of separated, I'm going to kind of want to leave those separate. Well, maybe not. Yeah, you know what? I am going to do that. I'm going to leave them separated. And I'm going to kind of turn them. These bottom ones that I'm leaving kind of loose, I'm going to want to file the bottoms of those just so that they don't hurt anyone. And separate these guys too. There you have it. That's the finished piece right there. I'll probably, whoops, you know what? One thing we didn't do, I've got to go back and do it, is I didn't adjust this wire. And I want to move the wire so it goes up there, and then fix this. I'm just going to make some minor adjustments just so that it complements this little piece there. I want to make sure my sides are in place where I want them. So I'm going to bend those down. Take one last look, and it looks like that's what I got right there. So we're all done. This project really showed that there's so many things that you can do with wire. There's so many things that you can do to a pendant to make it unique, to make it different, to make it your own. Don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid that you're going to mess something up. Most of my mistakes that I've made in pieces or something I wasn't happy with turned out to be one of the favorite pieces for other people who purchased it or who I gave it to. It turned out to be one of their favorite pieces. So you never know what people are going to like. So really just kind of play around with the wire. Take advantage of that dead soft wire. All right? Well, I hope you enjoyed this show today. I appreciate you stopping by. I'm the Rat Maker, Jim McIntosh, and I want you to remember there's something I tell everybody every time. If you want to make nice jewelry, beautiful jewelry, there's one thing you have to do. Practice, practice, practice.